your Mount Crushmore. So it's your top 4 beers that are kind of like the pinnacle, it's your founding fathers, maybe what got you into it, or maybe something that you just always go back to, something like that. Wes, you ready to go, man?
Yeah, I'll give it a shot. Definitely on my list of go-tos is Sierra Nevada Pale Ale. And it's a classic. Part of it is not even necessarily maybe the beer, but also just the history and the impact it's had on the industry. I mean, I feel good every time I buy a 6-pack. And on top of that, it is a really tasty beer. I think it's interesting to look at it and see where trends have gone over the past few decades, and yet it still, at least in my mind, stands up to a lot of the newer stuff and hits a lot of the flavor marks that I want. A lot of nice malt flavors and hop flavors are balanced in there. Second on that list, probably Top Cutter from Galebreaker. I personally think that's one of the best IPAs out there, and doesn't hurt that it's pretty local. My third would probably, I'm going to kind of go broad and call this a whole style rather than a specific product.
Okay.
But any true Kolsch from Germany.
Yeah.
And the downside of that is most of what we get here in the US, it's a pretty delicate beer. So a lot of the times it has suffered a bit by the time we get it. But if you can actually find a relatively fresh, well-preserved bottle of it, it's just a great style. Very sessionable, but also, I think, overlooked and underrated as far as how complex it can be flavor-wise. It's delicate flavors, but there's a lot there. And I'm a huge fan of German beer in general, but it's just a really great style, flavorful and light. Gosh, what would I say for my last one?
You got one more.
One more.
Then that's it. That's the only beers you get to drink. No, just kidding.
Yeah.
Forever.
Damn. Probably there's a wit beer, or Belgian wit beer called Blanche de Bruxelles, and which I think roughly translates as white of or from Brussels. And as far as Belgian wits go, it kind of falls in the category of those that are slightly tart, have a little bit of a citric acid, kind of tart lemony character to them, but it has a nice wheat base underneath that gives it a nice smooth mouthfeel. And it's a really tasty beer, and it kind of goes back to what you were talking about really approachable beers that maybe are somewhat sour. In this case, it's not super sour, but it has a touch of tartness, like I said, and just really easy drinking but tasty beer.
All right. Well,
Yeah.